have never been an angry person. This is important for you to understand from the beginning. What I do is not born from rage or hatred or even satisfaction. It comes from something quieter, something more certain. I do what I do because I see clearly what most people cannot see or refuse to see. I see the patterns. I see the waste. I see lives being lived incorrectly, and I correct them. You might think this sounds insane. You might already be forming judgments about me. But I ask you to listen, really listen, before you decide what I am. Because the truth is, you already know I am right. You have felt it too. That creeping sense that something is wrong with how we live. That most people drift through their days like ghosts, repeating the same meaningless actions, making the same careless choices, never questioning, never improving, never realizing they are the chaos they complain about. I simply act on what everyone secretly knows. Let me tell you about Sarah. Not because she was my first, she was not, but because she was perfect. Perfect in her imperfection. Perfect in how thoroughly she represented the problem I worked to solve. I first noticed Sarah on a Tuesday morning in October. She came into the coffee shop at exactly 7:42, ordered a medium caramel macchiato with extra caramel and whipped cream, took a photograph of it with her phone, sat at the table by the window, scrolled through her phone for 11 minutes without drinking a single sip, then left the coffee on the table, barely touched, and walked out to catch her bus. The next morning, Wednesday, 7:42, the same order, the same photograph, the same 11 minutes, the same abandoned coffee. Thursday, Friday, the following Monday, I watched her for 6 weeks. Every single weekday she performed this exact ritual. $7 spent on a drink she did not want. 11 minutes of her life spent staring at a screen showing her images of other people performing their own meaningless rituals. Also, she could post her own photograph and feel, for a brief chemical moment in her brain, that she existed. You see the waste, the pure, distilled waste of it. But that alone would not have been enough. Waste is everywhere. Waste is the foundation of modern life. What made Sarah necessary was what I learned in week 3 of my observations. After leaving the coffee shop, she took the number 12 bus to her job at a medical billing office. I followed her one day. I needed to understand the full pattern. She worked in a windowless room with 7 other people, all of them processing insurance claims. For 8 hours, she typed numbers into a computer system, numbers that determined whether sick people received care or were denied. She made, as far as I could determine from carefully positioned observation, approximately 19 errors per day. Small errors, a transposed digit here, a wrong code there, errors born from distraction, from spending her first 11 minutes of consciousness scrolling through her phone, from staying up too late watching television shows about people more interesting than herself, from eating a breakfast of processed sugar that caused her blood glucose to spike and crash. 19 errors per day, multiplied by approximately 240 working days per year. 4,560 errors annually. Each error potentially denying care to someone who needed it. Each error a small act of violence committed through carelessness. And she had no idea at all. She believed herself to be a good person. She posted on her social media accounts about kindness and compassion. She shared articles about helping others. She spent $7 every morning on a drink she did not want so she could feel sophisticated, feel seen, feel real, while her actual impact on the world was measured in thousands of small cruelties she never intended and never recognized. This is what I mean by seeing clearly. Most people would look at Sarah and see nothing wrong. A normal person living a normal life, going through the motions, doing her best. But I see the truth beneath the surface. I see the architecture of harm built from thoughtless repetition. I see a life that subtracts from the world rather than adding to it. And so I corrected her. I did it on a Thursday evening in late November. She had a pattern for Thursday evenings too. She left work at 5:27, took the bus to her apartment building, stopped at the mailbox in the lobby, climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, entered her apartment, and within 4 minutes ordered food delivery on her phone while turning on her television. I was waiting in her apartment. I had entered earlier that afternoon using the key I had made from an impression taken during one of her many careless moments. One of the dozen times she left her bag unattended while scrolling through her phone, unreachable and unaware. The lock on her apartment door was a standard pin tumbler mechanism. Laughably simple. This is another thing I have learned. Most people protect themselves very poorly. They leave themselves open. They create vulnerabilities through laziness and assume nothing will ever come through those openings. They are wrong. She came home. She got her mail. She climbed her stairs. She opened her door. She stepped inside and closed it behind her. She walked toward her kitchen, already reaching for her phone to place her order. She never saw me. She never heard me. One moment she was alive, scrolling through restaurant options, and the next moment she was not. It was quick. It was clean. It was as gentle as such a thing can be. I want you to understand something important. I felt no pleasure in this. No thrill. No excitement. I felt only the quiet satisfaction of a problem solved. Pattern corrected. A small chaos removed from the world. When I left her apartment that evening, I knew that tomorrow morning, no one would come into the coffee shop and waste $7 on a photograph. No one would sit at that medical billing office making 19 careless errors per day. The world was, in this small but real way, improved. You might think the authorities would have understood. You might think someone would have recognized the logic. But of course they did not. They saw only violence. They saw only death. They could not see the correction. They assigned a detective to investigate. Detective Morris. I learned his name from the news coverage. He gave press conferences. He assured the public they were pursuing leads. He asked anyone with information to come forward. But I had left no information to find. This is another thing people do not understand. They believe criminals are caught because investigators are clever. Sometimes this is true, but most often criminals are caught because they are stupid. They leave evidence because they are careless. They talk because they are proud. They make mistakes because they are emotional. I am none of these things. I am careful. I am silent. I am calm. And so Detective Morris had nothing to pursue but ghosts. I continued my work. There was Michael, who drove drunk every Friday night after his recreational softball league games. Not falling down drunk, just impaired enough that his reaction time was measurably slower. He had never caused an accident. He probably never would have. But probability is not certainty. Every Friday he rolled dice with other people's lives. Each drive was a small act of potential murder. Correction was necessary. There was Jennifer, who worked at a pharmacy and filled prescriptions while routinely checking her personal messages on her phone. Distracted, imprecise. I watched her nearly dispense the wrong medication to an elderly man 3 times before catching her error. Nearly, but nearly still means she was capable of it. Next time she might not catch it. Next time someone might die. Correction was necessary. There was Robert, who managed a small construction company and cut corners on safety inspections to save money. I documented 14 separate violations over the course of 2 months. Harnesses not rated for the loads. Scaffolding improperly secured. Workers sent into confined spaces without proper air monitoring. He told himself it was fine. Everyone does it. No one had been hurt. Yet, correction was necessary. I could continue. I could tell you about all of them. But you begin to see the pattern. I do not choose randomly. I do not kill for convenience or opportunity. I study. I document. I verify. And only when I am certain, absolutely certain, that a person is subtracting more from the world than they add, only then do I act. You might ask how I decide, how I measure, how I determine that one person's failures outweigh their value. This is a fair question. I have thought about it extensively. The answer is actually quite simple. I observe until the mathematics become clear, until the equation balances in only one direction. Sarah made 4,560 errors per year, causing direct harm to vulnerable people. She contributed nothing of comparable value to outweigh this harm. She existed in a state of net negative. The equation was clear. Michael endangered approximately 52 innocent drivers and pedestrians per year through his drunk driving. He worked as a middle manager at a shipping logistics company where his primary contribution was forwarding emails and attending meetings that could have been emails. Net negative. Jennifer's pharmacy errors had the potential to kill. Her existence outside of work consisted primarily of consuming and sharing social media content. Net negative. Robert's corner cutting endangered his workers daily, while he accumulated wealth he spent on luxury items he did not need. Net negative. You see how clear it becomes when you simply look at the facts. When you strip away the sentimentality and the assumption that all human life is inherently valuable regardless of how it is lived. This is the lie we tell ourselves. The comfortable delusion. Every life matters. Every person deserves to live. But this is provably false. Some lives make the world worse. Some people would serve humanity better by not existing. This is mathematical fact, not moral opinion. And here is what truly disturbs people, what they cannot accept, what makes them call me monster instead of seeing me as I am. I am not special in seeing this truth. You see it too. Everyone does. You have looked at someone and thought, the world would be better without them. You have read about a crime and thought, that person should not exist. You have been cut off in traffic by someone texting behind the wheel and thought, they are going to kill someone someday. You have all of these thoughts. The difference between us is that I have the courage to act on them. I have the clarity to follow through on what everyone knows but no one will say. This is why you are still listening to me, still reading these words. Because part of you, the honest part, recognizes the truth in what I am telling you. Detective Morris held another press conference after the fourth correction. He was frustrated. You could see it in his face even though he tried to hide it. For deaths in 4 months, he said. No apparent connection between the victims. No physical evidence. No witnesses. He admitted they had no suspects. He urged people to be cautious, to be aware of their surroundings, to report anything suspicious. But what could people report? What should they look for? Should they be suspicious of the man who is polite and calm? Should they fear the person who pays attention and notices patterns? Should they worry about someone who simply watches? This is the fourth thing I have learned. People are afraid of the wrong things. They fear strangers in dark alleys while ignoring the true dangers around them. They lock their doors against unlikely invasions while leaving their lives wide open through carelessness. They worry about rare, spectacular violence while accepting the daily grinding harm of thoughtless living. They have terrible threat assessment. This makes my work easier. After Detective Morris's press conference, I was more careful. Not because I was afraid of being caught. I am not afraid of much. But because attention complicates logistics. Increased vigilance, even poorly directed vigilance, creates obstacles. I adjusted my patterns. I extended my observation periods. I varied my methods. I became more patient. Patience is perhaps my greatest advantage. Most people cannot tolerate uncertainty. They need resolution. They need closure. They need to move forward. This makes them predictable. This makes them available. I can wait. I can watch. I can take as long as necessary to ensure accuracy and safety. Time is on my side because I am not driven by emotion or compulsion. I am driven by purpose. Purpose is patient. It was during this period of increased patience that I began to notice the watchers. Small things at first. A car parked on my street that did not belong to any resident. The same jogger passing my building 3 times in one evening. A woman at the coffee shop I frequent who seemed too interested in her newspaper to actually be reading it. Individually, these observations meant nothing. Coincidence, chance, normal urban life. But patterns are my specialty. I see patterns others miss. And a pattern was forming. Someone was watching me. This was surprising. Not alarming, but surprising. I had been so careful. I left no evidence. I created no connections. There was no logical way anyone could have identified me. And yet, the car, the jogger, the woman with the newspaper, 3 observations over 5 days. Pattern. I became the watcher of watchers. I modified my routines. I added randomness where previously I had structure. I took indirect routes. I changed my habits. And I watched to see who changed with me. This is how you identify surveillance. You become a variable and see who adjusts. The car disappeared after 3 days. The jogger I never saw again. But the woman with the newspaper, she remained. Different locations, different contexts, but always there, always present at the edges of my awareness. Too consistent to be coincidence, too careful to be obvious. She was good, very good, better than I expected. She must have realized I had noticed her because she vanished entirely for 2 weeks. But I knew she was still there. I could feel the attention, the weight of being observed. I have spent so much time watching others that I recognize the sensation of being watched in return. She was positioned to observe the entrance. She had a laptop open and appeared to be working, but her screen was angled wrong. She could not actually see it from where she sat. It was set dressing, which meant she was there to watch. And since my subject would not arrive for another 40 minutes based on his Saturday patterns, she must be there to watch for me. I did not enter the cafe. I did not approach the building. I left the area immediately and spent the next 3 days analyzing what this meant. She was not police. Police surveillance is different, heavier, less sophisticated, multiple units, radios, procedures. She was alone, independent, which meant she was either private security, which seemed unlikely, or she was something else. Something I had not anticipated. The most logical explanation, the one that fit the pattern of her behavior, was that she was like me. Not identical, but similar. She saw patterns. She watched. She acted on what she observed. And somehow she had observed me. This changed everything. This meant I had made errors. Small errors perhaps, but errors nonetheless. This meant my certainty about my own carefulness was flawed. This meant I needed to reconsider my methods. I stopped my corrections entirely. For 3 months, I did nothing but watch and wait and try to understand how she had identified me. I reviewed every correction, every observation, every moment I had spent in public or in view of cameras or in any context where I could have been documented. I was looking for the pattern she had seen, the error I had made. I found it in week 11 of my review, a traffic camera near the location of my second correction. I had accounted for the camera. I had avoided its direct line of sight, but I had not considered the reflection in the window of the building across the street. The camera had captured that reflection. And in that reflection, if you enhanced the image, if you analyzed it frame by frame, if you spent the time and had the expertise, you could see a figure. Indistinct, unclear, but there, present, correlated with the time of the correction. One image was not enough to identify anyone. But if you had that image and you cross-referenced it with other cameras in the area, other dates, other times, if you tracked the patterns of patterns, if you watched the watchers, eventually you would narrow the possibilities. Eventually you would find candidates. Eventually, if you were patient and skilled, you would find me. She was very good, better than good. She was exceptional. And this presented a problem that required careful consideration. The obvious solution was to correct her. She represented a threat. Threats should be eliminated. This is basic logic. But I hesitated, not from fear or weakness, but from curiosity. She had found me using methods similar to my own. She operated with a level of skill that matched or exceeded mine. This suggested she might understand. She might be someone I could talk to, someone who saw the world as I saw it. I decided to make contact. This was risky, the most dangerous thing I had ever attempted. But I had thought it through carefully. I had planned multiple contingencies. I had accepted the possibility that I might be wrong about her and prepared for that outcome. And so on a Tuesday evening in May, I approached her. She was sitting on a bench in a park, reading. Actually reading this time, not performing reading for surveillance purposes. I could tell the difference. She turned the pages at irregular intervals that matched genuine reading comprehension rather than the mechanical regularity of pretending to read. I sat down on the other end of the bench. I said nothing. I simply sat. I opened my own book, and I waited. After 7 minutes, she spoke without looking at me. Her voice was calm, unsurprised. She had known I would come eventually. She said, "You are more careful than I expected." I replied, "You are better than you should be." She said, "I have been watching you for 8 months. You have been watching others for longer." I said, "You found the reflection." She said, "Week 2. But I needed to be certain." We sat in silence for 3 minutes. Around us, the park continued its normal patterns. People walked dogs. Children played. No one noticed that two people were having a conversation that should not be possible. I asked the question that mattered most. Why have you not reported me? She closed her book. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were calm, clear, like looking into a mirror. She said, because you are correct. We talked for 2 hours that evening. We talked about patterns, about observation, about the mathematics of value and harm, about the courage required to act on clarity instead of hiding behind comfortable delusions. We talked about Sarah and Michael and Jennifer and Robert. I told her about the documentation, the careful analysis, the certainty required before action. She told me about her own work, different methods, different targets, but the same underlying logic. She did not call them corrections, she called them adjustments, but the principle was identical. Some lives subtract from the world. Some people would serve humanity better by not existing. This is not opinion. This is mathematical fact. Her name was Rebecca. At least that is what she told me, and I chose to believe her. We met 7 more times over the following month. Always in public spaces. Always careful. Always aware that we were both predators learning to trust another predator. It was the most honest relationship I have ever had. On our 8th meeting, she told me she had been diagnosed with an illness. Terminal. 18 months at most. She had known for 3 months but had told no one. She said she planned to continue her work until she could not physically continue it. She said she found meaning in the corrections. Not pleasure. Meaning. Purpose. A reason to exist that transcended the basic biological imperative to survive. I understood completely. We made a decision that night. We decided to document everything, to create a record of our work and our reasoning, not for justification, not for forgiveness, but for clarity, so that someday someone might understand. Someone might see what we saw. Someone might have the courage to acknowledge the truth we acted upon. This document you are reading now, these words, this is that record. Rebecca is gone now. She died 4 months ago. She completed 3 final adjustments before her illness made it impossible to continue. She died with purpose, with meaning, with the satisfaction of knowing her life on balance had been net positive. I continue alone now. The work goes on. The patterns remain. The need for correction does not diminish simply because one corrector is removed. If anything, the need increases. Every day more people drift through their lives, causing small harms through carelessness. Every day the chaos accumulates. Every day the mathematics become more clear. And now I must tell you something you have already begun to suspect. Something you have been trying not to think about as you have read these words. The reason this document exists. The reason I have shared all of this with you. You check your phone while driving. Not often, but sometimes. 3 times in the past month you have glanced at a notification while traveling at highway speeds. Each glance lasted between 2 and 4 seconds. At 60 miles per hour, you traveled between 170 and 350 feet while your attention was divided. Anything could have happened in that distance. A child running into the road. A car stopping suddenly. A pedestrian in a crosswalk. It has not happened yet. But yet is not the same as never. You work in customer service. You process requests and solve problems. But twice a week, sometimes 3 times, you are hungover from the night before. Your attention suffers. Your processing speed decreases by approximately 30%. Your error rate increases. You make small mistakes. Wrong information given. Incorrect policies applied. Problems escalated that should have been solved. Each error cascades into frustration and wasted time for the people you were supposed to help. You do not mean to cause this harm, but intention is not impact. You maintain relationships carelessly. You make commitments you do not keep. You say you will call and you do not call. You promise to help and you forget. You create small disappointments that accumulate into larger damages in the lives of people who trusted you. Again, not from malice. Simply from the thoughtless priority of your own convenience over your own word. The mathematics are clear. On balance, you subtract more than you add. You create more chaos than you resolve. You cause more harm than you prevent. The equation balances in only one direction. Correction is necessary. But here is where something changed. Here is why you are reading this instead of simply ceasing to exist without explanation. As I watched you, as I documented your patterns, I noticed something unexpected. You are trying. Not trying hard enough. Not trying effectively, but trying nonetheless. 3 weeks ago, you put your phone in your glove compartment before driving. You have done this 5 times since. It is inconsistent, but it is something. 2 weeks ago, you declined social plans the night before a workday. You recognized that being tired would impair your performance. Again, inconsistent, but something. Last week, you apologized to someone you had disappointed. You acknowledged your failure. You committed to doing better. You did not follow through on that commitment, but you recognized the need to make it. These are small things, tiny adjustments, barely visible changes in your patterns. But they represent something important. They represent the possibility of awareness, of improvement, of correction from within rather than correction from without. And so I face a question I have never faced before. Does the possibility of self-correction outweigh the current mathematics of harm? Is potential worth more than demonstrated pattern? Can someone change enough, quickly enough, thoroughly enough to tip their equation from negative to positive? I do not know the answer. This uncertainty is new to me, unfamiliar. I built my entire purpose on certainty, on clear mathematics, on observable patterns and logical conclusions. But you have introduced a variable I did not account for, the variable of change. Rebecca would have known what to do. She understood these calculations better than I did. She was more certain, more committed, more willing to act despite ambiguity. But Rebecca is gone. I am alone with this decision, and for the first time in my work, I am uncertain. So I am giving you something I have never given anyone before. I am giving you a choice, not explicitly, not with clear instructions, but with awareness. You now know you are being watched. You now know your patterns are being documented. You now know the mathematics are being calculated. You know that someone is determining whether you add to the world or subtract from it. What you do with this knowledge is up to you. You can dismiss it. You can tell yourself this is fiction, fantasy, the creative ravings of a disturbed mind seeking attention. You can continue your patterns unchanged. You can keep checking your phone while driving. You can keep showing up to work impaired. You can keep disappointing people who trusted you. You can maintain your current trajectory, or you can change. You can become aware of your impacts. You can recognize the small harms you cause through carelessness. You can correct yourself from within. You can tip your equation. You can become net positive. I will continue watching. I will continue documenting. I will continue calculating. And when I am certain, absolutely certain, one way or another, I will act accordingly. Either I will close your file and move on to other observations, satisfied that you have achieved self-correction. Or I will complete the correction myself, as I have done for others who could not or would not improve their equation. The choice in this small way is yours. This is the only time I have ever offered anyone this option. The only time I have ever believed someone might be capable of using it. I do not know if I am right to offer it. I do not know if my uncertainty is wisdom or weakness, but the offer is made nonetheless. You should know that I am very patient. I can watch for months, years if necessary. Time is on my side. I have no deadline, no urgency. I can afford to wait and see if you were worth this uncertainty, if you were worth this deviation from my pattern. But you should also know that I do not forget. I do not lose track. I do not lose interest. Once I begin watching someone, I watch them completely. I learn everything. I see everything. I understand everything. There is no hiding from observation. There is no pretending to change. I will know the difference between genuine improvement and performance. I always do. So go ahead. Live your life. Make your choices. Follow your patterns or break them. Be the person you are or become the person you could be. I will be watching. I will be documenting. I will be calculating. And when the mathematics become clear, When the equation balances definitively in one direction or the other, I will know what to do. I always know what to do. Certainty is my nature, even when uncertainty delays it. You might be wondering if you should go to the police, if you should report this document, if you should seek protection. You can try. Tell them a stranger on the internet wrote a disturbing story. Tell them you feel threatened. They will take a report. They will tell you to be careful. They might even increase patrols in your area for a few weeks. But they cannot protect you from observation. They cannot stop someone from watching. They cannot prevent documentation. And they certainly cannot arrest someone for seeing patterns and making calculations. Besides, would you even know what to tell them? Would you describe Detective Morris, who is now retired and living in Arizona? Would you mention Rebecca, who died of natural causes in hospice care under her real name, which was not Rebecca? Would you reference Sarah and Michael and Jennifer and Robert, so you have your knowledge, you have your awareness, you have your choice? Use them wisely, or do not. Either way, I will know, I will see, I will understand, and I will act accordingly when the time comes. Until then, I remain what I have always been, a watcher, an observer, a calculator of harm and value, a corrector of patterns, not from rage, not from pleasure, but from certainty, from clarity, from the quiet knowledge that some corrections cannot be made from within and must be applied from without. You know this is true. Deep down, in the honest part of yourself you usually ignore, I am right. You have looked at your own life and seen the waste. You have recognized your own carelessness. You have calculated your own equation and found it wanting. This is why these words disturb you. Not because they are insane, but because they are not. Not because they are wrong, but because they might be correct. The world would be better if people lived more carefully, more intentionally, more aware of their impacts and more responsible for their choices. This is not controversial. This is basic ethics. The only question is what to do about those who cannot or will not meet this basic standard. Society has decided to do nothing, to accept the chaos, to tolerate the waste, to allow the harm. I have simply decided differently. I have chosen correction over tolerance, action over acceptance, clarity over comfortable delusion. This makes me a monster in the eyes of those who profit from carelessness. But it makes me something else in the eyes of those who see clearly. It makes me necessary. And so the work continues. The watching, the documenting, the calculating, the correcting, one pattern at a time, one equation balanced, one small chaos removed from the world. It is not dramatic. It is not exciting. It is simply what must be done by someone willing to do it. Perhaps that someone is me. Perhaps it could be you if you learned to see clearly enough, if you found the courage to act on what you see. Perhaps there are others like Rebecca and me, working quietly, correcting patterns, balancing equations, making the world incrementally better through careful removal of those who make it worse. Or perhaps I am alone now, the last one, the final corrector. It does not matter. The work continues regardless. The mathematics do not change based on how many people calculate them. Truth is true whether observed or not. Patterns exist whether documented or not. Corrections are necessary whether completed or not. I continue because I must, because I see what others do not, because I have the clarity others lack, because I possess the certainty required to act on uncomfortable truths. This is not a choice. This is not something I decided to become. This is what I am. This is what I have always been. The world simply took time to present me with the situations that revealed my nature to myself. You might be different. You might have the capacity to see your patterns and change them. You might be able to correct yourself before external correction becomes necessary. I genuinely hope this is true. I take no pleasure in the work. I feel only the satisfaction of problems solved, of chaos reduced, of mathematics balanced. If you can balance your own equation, if you can tip from net negative to net positive, I will be satisfied to simply watch and document the change. But if you cannot, if you will not, if you remain thoughtless and careless and harmful despite knowing you are watched, despite understanding the stakes, despite being given this opportunity that no one else received, then the correction will be completed as planned. Cleanly, quietly, without anger or drama. Simply a problem solved. An equation balanced. Pattern corrected. The world will not miss you. This is not cruelty. This is observation. The world does not miss anyone whose absence improves it. This is mathematical fact. Your friends will grieve. Your family will suffer. But the equation is larger than individual emotional responses. The calculation includes everyone affected by your existence, not just those who love you. And when balanced properly, when calculated completely, when assessed without sentiment, the mathematics will be clear. I sit here now, writing these final words, and I realize something interesting. I am telling you all of this, sharing all of this knowledge, giving you this awareness and this choice, not because I am merciful or because I doubt my purpose or because I have weakened in my certainty. I am doing it because I am curious. I want to see if awareness changes behavior. I want to know if being watched, knowing you are watched, understanding the stakes of being watched, is enough to prompt real change. This is my experiment. You are my data point. An experiment of one is not scientifically valid, but it is better than no experiment at all. Rebecca would have appreciated this. She always said I needed to be more scientific in my approach, more rigorous, more willing to test hypotheses instead of simply acting on established patterns. Let me tell you more about Rebecca, because understanding her will help you understand what is at stake here, what is possible, what you could become if you chose clarity over comfort. Rebecca was an architect before she became what she was. She designed buildings, spaces where people would live and work and move through their days. She told me once that architecture is fundamentally about understanding patterns of human movement and behavior. You observe how people naturally want to move through space, and you either accommodate that instinct or deliberately disrupt it for a purpose. Good architecture recognizes patterns. Bad architecture fights them. She applied this same logic to her work with corrections. She would observe someone for months, sometimes a full year, documenting not just their harmful behaviors but the architecture of their entire existence. The structures that supported their patterns. The spaces they created for themselves and others. The flow of their impact through the world. There was a man she told me about, a landlord who owned 4 apartment buildings in a struggling neighborhood. He was not overtly cruel. He did not steal deposits or threaten tenants. He simply did the absolute minimum required by law. Broken heating systems were repaired on day 29 of the 30-day legal window. Pest infestations were addressed with the cheapest possible treatments that barely met code requirements. Maintenance requests were ignored until they became emergencies, then handled in whatever way cost the least. His tenants lived in a state of constant low-grade crisis. Not bad enough to break a lease. Not good enough to be called living. They spent their energy managing the failures of their housing instead of improving their circumstances. Children did homework in cold apartments. Elderly people climbed stairs with broken handrails. Working parents lost hours of sleep dealing with rats in the walls. Rebecca documented it all. She calculated the cumulative effect. Missed school days, lost work hours, medical issues from poor conditions. The cascading impact of his minimal compliance on hundreds of lives over years. She built an equation that was undeniable. His correction took place on a Tuesday morning in March. He was found in one of his own buildings, in an apartment he had been inspecting. The death appeared to be a heart attack. Natural causes. No one investigated further. But Rebecca knew the truth. She had induced the heart attack. I will not explain how. The method is not important. What matters is that she had calculated that his continued existence would cause more aggregate suffering than his death. The mathematics were clear. His buildings were sold to new ownership. The new owners actually maintained them. Hundreds of lives improved because one life ended. This is what I mean by seeing clearly. This is what I mean by having the courage to act. Rebecca understood that sentiment and law and social convention are not the same as morality. That sometimes the most moral action is the one that society would condemn. That clarity requires you to ignore what people say is right and focus only on what actually reduces suffering and increases well-being in the sum total. She taught me to think bigger, to look beyond individual patterns to systemic impacts, to understand that some people harm others not through dramatic violence but through persistent negligence, through consistent choice of their own convenience over others' basic needs, through the slow grinding erosion of other people's potential. You might think this is rationalization, justification for the unjustifiable. But answer me this: if you could prevent 100 people from suffering, from wasting years of their lives in unnecessary struggle, from having their potential stolen by someone else's laziness, but the only way to prevent it was to end one life, the life of the person causing that suffering, would you do it? Would you have the courage? Most people say no. They hide behind principles, behind rules, behind the comfortable fiction that all life is equally valuable and that we must never weigh one against many. But this is cowardice dressed as morality. This is weakness pretending to be strength. The truth is that some lives, when measured by their actual impact on others, when calculated honestly and completely, have negative value. They make the world worse by existing, and removing them makes the world better. You are starting to understand why I shared this with you, why I broke my pattern of silence to give you this awareness. It is not mercy. It is not weakness. It is not even really a gift. It is a test. A question I am asking through action rather than words. Can you change? Can you see yourself clearly enough to recognize your own patterns of harm? Can you find the courage to correct from within what I would otherwise have to correct from without? Can you become someone whose existence adds rather than subtracts? I am giving you time to answer this question. Time I have never given anyone else. Because you showed something. Those small, inconsistent attempts at improvement. That moment of recognizing your failure and apologizing. That brief flash of awareness. It suggests possibility. It suggests that unlike Sarah and Michael and Jennifer and Robert, unlike the dozens of others I have corrected over the years, you might have the capacity for genuine change. But understand this clearly. Time is not infinite. Patience is not weakness. I will wait, but I will also watch. I will document every choice you make from this moment forward. Every time you reach for your phone while driving, I will note it. Every time you show up impaired to a job where people depend on you, I will record it. Every time you break a promise or disappoint someone who trusted you, I will add it to the calculation. And when the data is sufficient, when the pattern is clear, when the mathematics balance definitively in one direction, I will act. If the equation shows improvement, shows genuine change, shows that you have become net positive, then I will close your file. I will move on. You will never hear from me again. You will live your life never knowing how close you came to correction, never knowing that you earned your continued existence through actual change rather than luck or chance. But if the equation shows stagnation, shows continued harm, shows that you read these words and changed nothing, learned nothing, became nothing more than what you were, then the correction will proceed. You will not see it coming. You will not hear it approaching. One moment you will be living your careless life, and the next moment you will not be living at all. Clean, quick, final. This is not a threat. Threats are emotional. They come from anger or fear or the desire to control through intimidation. This is simply information, a description of what will be based on what is. The mathematics do not care about your feelings. The patterns do not adjust for your hopes. The correction proceeds according to data, not desire. So I will watch, I will document, I will calculate, and I will learn whether the knowledge of observation is sufficient to prompt self-correction, or whether external correction remains the only effective solution to the problem of careless living. Either way, I learn something. Either way, the work continues. Either way, I remain certain of my purpose even as I explore uncertainty about my methods. And you, reading these words in whatever moment you read them, in whatever place you find yourself, with whatever thoughts running through your mind as you process this information, you have a choice to make. Not now, not today, but every day, every moment, every action, every decision. You choose whether to live carefully or carelessly, intentionally or thoughtlessly, as a net positive or net negative. Choose well. I am watching. I am always watching. And when the mathematics become clear, I will know what to do. I always know what to do. This is my certainty. This is my purpose. This is what I am. Remember that. Remember me. Remember that somewhere, someone is watching your patterns, documenting your choices, calculating your equation. Remember that your life is being measured not by what you intend, but by what you actually do. Remember that impact matters more than intention. Remember that every careless moment accumulates. Remember that someone is keeping track. Remember all of this and then decide how you will live. Decide what your equation will be. Decide whether you will correct yourself or wait for correction to arrive from outside. I will be here, patient and certain, waiting to see which path you choose. I am always here, watching, waiting, calculating, correcting. This is what I do. This is what I am. This is what I will continue to be long after you stop thinking about these words. Long after you convince yourself this was just a story. Long after you return to your patterns and forget that someone is watching. But I will not forget. I never forget. This is my gift and my burden. Perfect memory, perfect attention, perfect patience. And so we come to the end of this document. The end of this confession that was never meant to be found, but somehow you have found anyway. The end of this explanation that requires no explanation for those who see clearly. The end of this record that will exist only in the moment you experience it and nowhere else. What you do next is up to you. How you live from this moment forward is your choice. Whether you become someone worth watching for documentation of improvement or someone worth watching for documentation of the final correction, that is for you to decide through your actions. I remain as I am, watching, certain, patient, necessary. This is the mathematics made manifest. This is clarity translated into action. This is correction, and you are being watched.